Hi everyone, I'm here to present you the Abattoir of Zir tier list that we have created on Maxroll. If you don't know about the Abattoir of Zir, there's also this post here in the description where it describes what the event is. TLDR, it's a limited time event that starts on December 5th, goes until the end of Season 2, and is extremely high-end difficult content, similar to D3 Greater Rifts. So you go in there, you have this portal, there's a timer, there's a progression bar, and then you have a boss fight against 3 Bloodseekers at the end. It starts kind of where T100 Nightmare Dungeons leave you off, and then goes and scales up extremely high from there up to tier 25 in Abattoir of Zir. It has its own tier scaling. So we went back and updated all of our build guides here on Maxroll. So you can find new Abattoir of Zir variants now. For example, when you go down here to the variants section, you're going to see this here. There's Abattoir of Zir. There's like these high-end setups that we created for basically every single build, and you can go and check them out. Or you can go obviously on the new tier list that we have crafted, where we ranked all of these builds against each other. So we had a bunch of meetings to discuss this, and this is what we came up with. And I guess to no surprise, Hoda Barb and Ball Lightning Socks are going to be at the top here. At least that is our prediction. And there are a bunch of other really good builds out there that probably every class has something to kind of go with Barbs and Sorks being the two strongest, Necro being the weakest, it seems, and Rogue and Druid being like somewhere in the middle, basically, for their top-end builds. But we actually went and ranked all of the builds, and this is the result. Now, there are a few notes here that I want to go into to kind of give a better picture here of what is going on. So we mostly ranked this first by their damage potential. And then also you need to hit like a certain kind of like minimum survivability requirement. This is very high-end content. It's very tough to survive. So it will also depend a lot on the actual like skill and ability to play the game. This is no joke. Basically, you can't just walk in there and expect to one-shot stuff. Even with a Hoda Barb on the higher tiers, stuff will live a long time. At least that's the expectation. And we will see if anyone is gonna be able to push all the way to tier 25 at all, at least for a while, until the Tears of Blood glyph comes online. The Tears of Blood glyph, in case you don't know, it's a new glyph here that looks like this, and that gives you an insane damage multiplier. It can be ranked up 200 times, and you can expect something of like a 1000+% damage multiplier from this glyph once it is fully leveled, which may or may not take forever, basically. But either way, it is very strong and gives you like a pretty massive buff. So this definitely changes a bit of the tier list as we progress. There are 2 builds in particular that are ranked here, are not really easy to put in any of those tiers. And this is Poison Shred and the Stormclaw Druid. In both of those cases, we actually have a note here as well. You run with the aspect of the Blurred Beast. So there is a way to make this like poison builds. And aspect of a Blurred Beast has the funny interaction that it kind of double dips on every single or almost every single multiplier. There are some exceptions. And if that double dips on this glyph, then you're going to see some pretty crazy results, north of like tens of billions or potentially hundreds of billions of hits or so, I guess, are probably possible with this aspect with those 2 builds. If you stack a lot of poisons and then double dip on this glyph. So this is why we have some of these Druid builds here relatively far up with an asterisk, because they will start way lower and then kind of like move up way faster than other builds due to this. But in general, the Tears of Blood glyph does not really change the relative ranking between builds all that much. Everyone kind of gets a similar benefit from just getting a generic damage bonus, but there is also the secondary effect on the glyph where you buff rare nodes. And depending on which rare nodes you can buff, there are better and worse ones to buff depending on the build. So that might also slightly change the balance between builds depending on if you can actually use this on really good rare nodes or not. So that depends a little bit. In the case of rogues, for example, I can say that literally every single rogue build puts it on a cheap shot board is always going to be the same. But for other classes, this is not really necessarily the case, because some of the Paragon boards are not as universal as, for example, rogue boards. If you're talking about, for example, Necromancer, they have extremely specialized Paragon boards. The options are much more limited in some cases. Then there's also the case of Arvarion, Spear of Lycander. This is uber unique here. Only Sorks and Druids can use this one. And this potentially allows you to kind of cheese your way up to the higher tiers a little bit with good enough RNG. However, this is extremely inconsistent, and the entry ticket is extremely costly for the Abattoir of Zir. We're talking about 800 sigil powder for a tier 1 sigil. So if you want to try to fish for like a really good run, or overly rely on the RNG of, for example, Alvarion, then you can easily spend thousands and thousands of sigil powder and run out really fast before you ever get anywhere. So we didn't really rank the builds based on the perfect RNG with Barbarian equipped or something like that. But there will definitely be cases that if item swapping is allowed in Abattoir of Zir, which right now is a bit of a question mark, but if it is allowed, you can swap to Alvarion, defeat an elite, get a Carnage Shrine, and suddenly get like, 30% progression or whatever. Or you can like, finish the Bloodseekers at the end extremely easily. And this will kind of allow you to like push the limits a bit more easily than on other classes, but this is only open to the Sorcs and the Druids. So there's some RNG involved here, and it's only for 2 classes, and we didn't really rank based on Alvarion. So this is something to consider. So for example, if you play a Werewolf Druid and you kind of make your way through the run, and then at the end you equip the Alvarion, you get the right shrine, you defeat the Bloodseekers easily, it could be way better than what it shows here, for example. And then we also have just a general ranking of the builds. So we start on F tier. F tier are basically the builds that will probably not be able to do Abattoir at all, because there is a time limit. So if you don't have enough DPS, then you might just not be able to actually finish a run at all. So there is, kind of like this minimum requirement in terms of DPS, and we kind of move up from there. So based on the damage output of a build, we kind of rank them higher and higher. And then, of course, also including a bit of the defense. But in general, we didn't really consider the difficulty of playing this build successfully. It's more like, okay, how well does this build perform? Based on our experience, based on, what we expect with the damage output, and what we know, for example, from tier 100 dungeon testing. So this is the overall tier list here. And yeah, we basically have, a bunch of like really bad builds down here that I would really not recommend to play. But my expectation would be that, yeah, F tier builds are going to struggle to kind of like do any Abattoir of Zir. Maybe you can do like the lower tiers. Then D tier builds, I guess you can do like kind of like the lower, the 1-digit tiers or so. And then I guess C tier, I guess you can start working towards, even like double-digit tiers or so, if you have ranked up the glyph a little bit. And then B tier builds are starting to be like kind of like the better builds, where you can actually kind of progress a bit and, rank up your glyph a bit and then get more powerful as you go. And finally, we have the A and the S tier builds that are just going to be like the best here overall. So the best one is, unsurprisingly, Hoda Barb, I think. You can have these kind of like immortal builds there. Same for the Ball Lightning. You can also do this Melted Heart of Salix stuff on both of these. So this is, part of the reason why they're so far up, but also because they have insane damage output. And then, we have stuff like this here. This is kind of like ranked a bit optimistically based on this double dipping. Then we have other Barb builds. We have some of the Rogue builds that we expect to perform pretty well because of the T-Bolt's Willbug. There's Twisting Blades, Pen Shot, Rapid Fire, so all of these should probably be pretty solid. Some more Sorc, that is basically a Ball Lightning in disguise. And then we come here with like the Necro builds. So there's Infinimus, Bone Spear, and Bloodlance that we expect to perform at roughly equal levels here on the Necro, but Necro just being weaker than the other classes in general. And then another few builds here. There's like Double Swing, Werewolf, Stormclaw, a bunch of other Rogue builds here, Blizzard Sorc, Whirlwind Barb, Thorns Barb. So these are kind of like the builds here for Abattoir of Zir. And of course, it goes further down. If you want to play some of the other like more C tier builds or so, then yeah, they're going to be down here. Of course, the Abattoir of Zir is not out yet. We didn't really get to test it or anything yet. And we will come back to potentially make some updates on this tier list. So keep an eye on this. And we're also going to probably make some kind of like announcements or so on Maxwell Discord or on the Maxwell news posts that an update has occurred if we do that. Or always just come back and check the changelog. So this is like a fresh tier list. Right now there's nothing to see. But of course, if we move some stuff around based on our testing, based on the results, then this is what we're going to do. But for the most part, I think this is a pretty solid tier list and should give us a relatively realistic picture of how different builds and classes will perform. And I'm quite excited to see how close to reality this really is, how it will actually feel to go into Abattoir of Zir, how much we have to adjust our builds potentially. So it's going to be quite exciting. In any case, I hope this helps you to make a decision on which build you want to play. I hope you have been gearing up your character. And as I mentioned, if you're looking for our build guides, they're all here. We have the variants. Also, for example, for my own planners, if you look for just like a quick planner that you want to grab or so, I always have them here on my Discord. So there is all of the builds listed that I have been updating this season, some of my Maxwell guides and more that I've been playing. So you can also just always open these, and there are usually different variants in there, including AOZ variants, including Uber uniques, etc. So go check that out. Go check the paragons. So there are usually some multiple steps here, for example, for AOZ variants. So we have, there's a standard variant, then we have the Tears of Blood ranked up, which increases in radius and all that stuff. So you can find exactly this stuff here as well in the Maxwell guides and, of course, on the planners. And that's it for this video here. Hope you enjoyed this. I wish you good luck in the Abattoir of Zir. I'm quite excited to see how it will turn out. Hope you're excited as I am. And see you guys next time.